Alright guys, this is a video about realistic expectations and where we are currently with VR. A burgeoning market, a fledgling technology that is still finding its feet. Current market leader is Quest, a standalone headset that has sold well, although apparently the attachment rate is not very great. That means that people are buying the headset but they aren't buying a lot of games for it. It's not being used a lot. It's the cheapest way to get into VR. Obviously, standalone. You don't need a PC or a console to attach it to, so it's cheaper to get into, and it's less friction in certain ways. No wire, although there is a lot of friction in other areas as well. But that's a different conversation. I got into a bit of a back and forth with Shughead Games on Twitter, who had responded to PSVR without parole, on the subject of Sony's support for VR compared to Meta's support. Now, of course, lots and lots of factors to take into account here. You can't expect parity just because you want it across various, companies' actions and the different circumstances that they find themselves within, and the different. I've got a call coming through. I'm not going to answer it. For one, Meta has Meta money. Okay, it's stupidly rich. Meta has a ridiculous amount of money to throw at this. It's probably subsidizing the headsets, selling them at a loss. It's just bought up a shit ton of studios to start developing games exclusively, no doubt, for the Quest. Sony, obviously, is an electronics company that does a lot of other things. PSVR 2 is a side quest for Sony. Okay. And there's a bottleneck for PSVR 2. You have to own a PS5 in order to be able to even think about getting a PSVR 2. So there are certain market reasons why Sony has sort of had a we've called it a slow launch, and people have sort of made excuses for the so-called lack of AAA titles on PSVR 2 because there's this bottleneck, and it took a couple of years for PS5 to be readily available. The pandemic and everything else that went on, the chip shortages, things set consoles back a bit. The PS5 only in the last 6 to 8 months has been readily available, and so it wasn't out there in high enough numbers to really justify a balls to the wall push for a very expensive, very niche peripheral. So Sony have done like a sort of slow burn approach to PSVR 2. Although having said that, it's already got more AAA games than any other headset. It certainly has got more AAA games in its first year, first 10 months, than any other headset. At launch, you had, of course, the big hitters: Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 8 Village, Gran Turismo 7, Horizon Call of the Mountain. Sony also threw a load of money at a bunch of third-party studios to upgrade some of their games to bring the best versions of them to PSVR 2, often with a free upgrade because it was subsidized by Sony. So there was Sony money flying around everywhere to make sure that we had a really good selection of games to play on PSVR 2 in our first year, and we have. And I'm drowning in games. I have not got enough hours in the day to play the games I've already bought, let alone the stuff that's coming soon. It's been absolutely amazing, the amount of quality content. We've had a few rough launches of games, and they've got high profile, criticism, games that were released before they were really ready. But more and more we're seeing those patches come through, and those games are fulfilling their potential now. So you got things like Switchback, looks gorgeous on PSVR 2. You could not do that game on a Quest standalone. You could not do Crossfire Sierra Squad, the same as it is on PSVR 2. There's a gulf in quality. And anyway, this back and forth I had with Showcade Gaming on Twitter, he was basically saying, Sony, they're just not committing to VR. And this was in the context of discussing Asgard's Wrath. So the first Quest exclusive game, Asgard Wrath, in years. I don't know when the last one was. Assassin's Creed Nexus does not seem to be, a forever exclusive. It certainly seems to be a timed exclusive, but there's been no talk whatsoever of that being Quest only. That's a timed exclusive. That game will come to other headsets in the future. Watch this space. But yeah, so Asgard Wrath, it looks like a cool game. A nice, huge, 60-hour RPG. Looks like it's got cool sort of puzzle elements. It looks like a cool game. I'm happy for everybody who gets to enjoy it. And I'm a little bit FOMO that I'm not going to be able to play it on PSVR 2. But we've got a bunch of games that are only on our headset as well. So who's counting? It doesn't matter. As long as everybody's got something to enjoy. But this narrative that Sony aren't committing enough to VR is crazy on the face of it for several different reasons. First of all, the sheer amount of money that they must have poured into those VR modes for AAA games, Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 4, GT7, all free upgrades by third-party studios, or obviously Gran Turismo was Sony, but free upgrades. That's funded. Then you've got Synapse, Crossfire, Green Hell, loads of other games that are only on PSVR 2, and a lot of multiplats that have the best version by quite some margin on PSVR 2. Compare Saints and Sinners 2 Retribution, PSVR 2, to Quest. It is leagues apart, several generations apart. It's absolutely beautiful on PSVR 2. It looks a bit shit on Quest, but that's because it's a mobile headset. It's probably still a fun game. I know it launched with a lot of problems. They've probably ironed them out since. But graphically speaking, performance-wise, there's no comparison. And it seems that some people, like Shughead, apparently, whose opinion I've respected and listened to a lot at times, but I'm kind of surprised that I've seen him say this stuff on Twitter. But that take that he was voicing on Twitter doesn't make any sense. It's like saying you expect... So he's saying, they're all just a bunch of Quest ports. Just a bunch of Quest ports on PSVR 2. Ridiculous thing to say for multiple reasons. First of all, they're not Quest ports. None of those games were owned by Meta. Those are third-party studio games. We have never referred to third-party games in this way before. I'll go back to the Mega Drive. When Street Fighter 2 finally came out on the Mega Drive, and we got a fantastic Championship Edition version of it, nobody complained, saying, "Oh, it's just another SNES port," because it had been on SNES before that. Nobody complained about that. We were ecstatic to get one of the very best third-party studio games on the Mega Drive. If the opposite was happening, if PlayStation VR 2 wasn't getting these third-party games, that would be something to complain about, ironically. But the fact that they're getting them is a bonus for the headset, and they're not Quest ports. They are third-party games that have always been multi-plat releases, and you want them on there, and we're often getting the best versions, sometimes quite significantly better. But he's complaining that a lot of them are just basically straight ports. Even the ones that haven't had much or any work done to them to upgrade to take advantage of PSVR's hardware. What is the logic in complaining about that? You're basically saying you expect these independent studios, often very, very small studios that are struggling to exist. They're on the fucking breadline, because VR is like I said, it's a growing market. It's not easy to make money in VR right now, although you've got a lot of very passionate people dedicating their lives to making content for VR, even though they know that there's a chance it won't sell well because there's just not enough people out there playing VR yet. It's still growing. But that's like saying you expect these small studios to invest a huge amount of money potentially into upgrading their game to run on a headset that's only been out 10 months on a platform that has a bottleneck of needing a PS5 in the first place to be able to buy it, right? So it's obviously going to have a slower growing, a slower arc of sales, because there's that extra layer of investment that you need in order to be able to get to the point where you can get a PSVR 2, right? This is one of the several reasons Sony is playing it safe and not trying to bankrupt themselves, or to exaggerate, they're trying not to lose too much money, yet still supporting this kind of unproven medium. It's still fringe. It's still the vast majority of gamers are not interested or are not convinced, and there's still a certain amount of friction that the average gamer just can't be arsed with. We know how amazing VR is, it can be, but that takes some time and dedication and ignoring of, or rather navigating certain frictions that most gamers just don't care to do, right? So there's several different barriers to VR growing or succeeding at the level that it would need to in order to justify the kind of investment that you might want to see to really see all these studios maximizing the performance of their games, to bring them out onto a new headset that, again, is necessarily, because of market conditions and economic circumstances, going to be a slow burn platform. It's absolutely ridiculous to complain about that situation. We've been absolutely spoilt for choice on PSVR 2. This opinion that Shug is putting forward, that we've seen, quite a lot on the internet, I would say is sort of a privileged perspective. It's from the perspective of somebody who has all the headsets, right? Shughead plays all the headsets. He's got an expensive PC rig. He's had multiple PC headsets. He's got his standalone headsets, and he's got his PS5 and his PSVR 2. So he's got them all. So to him, a lot of these games are old news. To the vast majority of people buying PSVR 2, they've never seen these games before. They've never played them. They haven't had PC VR. They haven't had a Quest a lot of the time, right? So it's a privileged position that you're speaking from, Shughead. If you ever see this video, I doubt you will. I'll tag you, but it's disappointing because it's about realistic expectations, and we don't need to be. It's like, again, because it's going to be a slow process for Sony to be able to contribute to this market and get to a place where it's profitable enough to actually invest even more than they already have been, which is a huge amount, into bringing those AAA experiences. Again, with the caveat that we've already got more AAA games on PSVR 2 than any other headset in the first 10 months. But fuck me. Microsoft's not even doing VR. So shouldn't we just at least appreciate the fact that they're in the game and they're pushing the envelope? I think we should.